All right, so I talk about this extensively in my new book, Burning Down the House, link in bio, why it's so difficult to set boundaries with toxic parents. And specifically in this video, I'm going to be discussing why it's so difficult to set boundaries with your devout Jehovah's Witness parents. This is an extremely common problem among PMOs, people who are physically in the organization but have mentally checked out. But yeah, you might relate to this even if you were never a Jehovah's Witness. All right, so here are 5 reasons you might be struggling to stand up to your Jehovah's Witness mother or father, and 5 tips to end the madness. Acknowledging that you're in an abusive relationship with your parents is hard. That's a tough mental shift. It's like, think about it. You're not just waking up to the truth about the truth. Oh my God, I woke up. You're also waking up to the truth of who your parents are. And I mean like what their priorities are. Their relationship with you is not their number one priority. They're willing to give you up in a heartbeat for the organization. Waking up to that reality, that's a tough pill to swallow. And the reason I put this as number 1 is because you have a lot of PMOs, not all of them, but you have a lot of PMOs who pat themselves on the back. Like, oh, I'm so smart, I woke up. You know, mom and dad are so brainwashed, I figured it out, I'm so smart. But they're not leaving. Because of tensions and conflict between mom and dad, they're still walking on eggshells, tiptoeing around, which actually shows that mom and dad have the upper hand because they've successfully managed to keep you under their thumb. Prove me wrong. Leave. Okay, so obviously this goes without saying. You're afraid of being shunned. That's why it's difficult to stand up to your folks. You don't want to be shunned, but it's not just the big act of leaving, whether you're disfellowshipped, removed, disassociated, or whatever. It's not just the big act of leaving the organization and being officially shunned. It's all the little things that add up through the years. You know what I'm talking about. Mom didn't like what I said the other day, so now she's ignoring my calls and being petty again. You know, I gotta return the lawnmower to dad. You know, you borrowed the lawnmower, but because you didn't go to the meeting on Sunday, dad's got to stick up his ass, right? And so he's like, I'm busy, so just leave it in the driveway. I'm gonna take the kids to grandma and grandpa's, okay? And when I go to pick them up, I find out that grandma and grandpa have been chirping Watchtower indoctrination into their little brains, so when I go to pick them up, they're parroting whatever grandma and grandpa said. So it's not just the big shunning moment, but all these little passive-aggressive moments where your parents are petty, they're disrespectful, they undermine your authority as a parent. And you know, you don't do anything about it, so they think they can keep doing it. It's like when a child, is pushing your boundaries, testing the boundaries to see what mom and dad is going to put up with. And you're like, yo, I'm not going to put up with that shit. That's basically what your parents are doing. They're testing your boundaries and you have none. All right, this is a big one. They were taught to never question authority. Right? So they expect the same from you. There is nothing, I can tell you right now, from experience, there is nothing more frustrating when they realize that the same tactics that were used on them aren't going to work on you. You won't be held under the thumb. You won't be spoken down to like you're a moron. You won't be berated like a toddler. Yeah, they put up with that shit their whole lives from the organization. You never grow up in the Jehovah's Witnesses. All of you know that. You're forever infantilized. So your parents put up with this type of behavior, and so they expect you to just shut up and take it, right? So basically, when you officially stand up to your parents, it triggers them, but not because you're being disrespectful. You could be polite. It doesn't matter. And you're not saying that they're horrible failures as parents. It's not really about them. It's because you're not letting the organization dominate your life the same way it did your parents, and they resent that. So another common reason that it could be really difficult to stand up to your Jehovah's Witness parents is that you just genuinely love them, and you know that this is going to be a huge, massive upheaval in your relationship. Maybe they're near perfect, seemingly have no flaws. You guys have a great relationship, and this is just going to suck. So, it's quite possible that there's any serious manipulation or crappy abusive behavior going on. They could be lovely people. You have a great relationship, but you don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness, and you know that this is just going to destroy everything. That's a legitimate reason to be scared or to stand up to your folks. Totally understandable. All right, so this one's really tricky and annoying. Let's say your mom is a nightmare, or it could be the other way around. Let's say it's your mom, and dad is awake. Dad has put 2 and 2 together. You give dad credit, and you guys maybe have a better relationship. Come on, dad, you know what's up. and you know how the organization has turned, you know how mom is, and you know how the organization has turned her into this self-righteous, petulant toddler. But instead of standing up for you, dad just enables mom. So basically, the parent that you thought was your ally is just not going to be there for you. So you concede. Okay, dad, I'll tone it down. I'll suppress my doubts. I won't rock the boat so as not to mess things up between you and mom. Okay, sure. All right, fine. I don't want to make things more difficult for you and mom. It's this sick dynamic that those two have. And it is not going to change. So these are some of the top 5 reasons why it's so difficult to set boundaries, specifically with Jehovah's Witness parents. You could apply this to different situations. All right, so where do we go from here? What can we do about it? Tip number 1, nothing will change unless you do something drastic. And by drastic, I mean you have to be firm. All right, so long as you couch your words and tiptoe around the problem, nothing will ever change. You basically have to do something that's so out of character from what they expect that it commands their attention. I'm not saying be disrespectful. I'm not saying yell, fight, nothing like that. You just have to be firm. You have to do something so out of character that it shocks them, or else they're just going to think it's business as usual. Tip 2, your parents are used to doing everything on their terms. All right, you got to state your boundary, state a consequence for violating that boundary, and be prepared to hold it. Make no mistake, this is going to be perceived as disrespect. They're absolutely going to be offended, and they're going to guilt trip you. And the reason why is because it forces them to take responsibility for their own actions. And a lot of times what will happen is they'll just ignore you, guilt trip you, ignore you, or, have this reaction of how dare you? Maybe they give you the silent treatment to try to punish you. In some way they act out. They're literally throwing the adult equivalent of a temper tantrum. It's not your problem that mom, doesn't have any emotional regulation at 72 years old. But if you hop right back in I'm sorry, mom, I don't want to, and you walk on eggshells and do that shit, you're right back at square one. Like I said, say your piece, be respectful, but then you have to hold the line. All right, tip 3, you got to get comfortable with discomfort. Think about it. Do you ever stop and think, this is weird? Everything's sunshine and roses so long as I nod along and fall in line and please mom and dad. And then the second I don't, they flip a switch and they're insane. The second I try to stand up for myself, it's nope, okay. You can either settle for this illusory love, sure, settle for the fake sunshine and roses for the rest of your life. Or you can start to carve out those new neural pathways that say, you know what, growth is uncomfortable. We're not supposed to be in constant conflict with people. You're not supposed to be in constant fight or flight mode, especially with somebody like your parents, someone you're so close to. We want to get along. We want to have empathy and connection with other people, but that shouldn't come at the expense of your self-respect. And that's what's happening. As unnatural and out of character as it is for you, you have to radically change your behavior. You have to radically accept that this is gonna suck. Just takes practice, a muscle you gotta build. The more you practice operating from that framework, that there's gonna be conflict, you're gonna stand up for yourself, your parents aren't gonna like it, this is gonna suck, it becomes second nature. You're not just gonna wake up one morning and be okay with this. Of course it's gonna suck, this isn't natural. But the more you keep practicing it, it will become second nature. Because again, you gotta remember, if you keep swooping in to smooth things over with your parents, or you couch your apology, or you constantly censor yourself and do the back and forth, it dilutes your message and trains your parents that this behavior is okay. Tip number 4, do not, I repeat, do not let your parents undermine your authority as a parent with your children. They don't get to see little Ashton and Brianna, and you gotta go stand out on the front lawn and wait, till the visitation is over because you're apostate. Fuck that. You're grown enough to prioritize your child's best interests over your parents' feelings. Not my kids, not my wife, not my life. If you think it's in your child's best interest to not separate them from Gam Gam, if you think that it's best for them to have grandma and grandpa in their life and their extended family and cousins, and you think it would be traumatic to rip them from that right now, that's your call as a parent. But then don't be surprised when your parents don't respect you. I'm just really passionate about this because I know you love your children. I know you want what's best for them, but I just think you have a tremendous opportunity to stop the cycle now. The cycle could end with you. That's a profound opportunity. All right, and tip number 5, all of this can get really overwhelming. We're not built for this. Like I was saying, we're not built to be in combat with mom and dad. But it's happening. This is the reality. My 2 cents. Take it or leave it. Consider speaking to a therapist or a counselor. All right, this isn't me going, you should go to therapy. I'm saying this is a detached professional who is trained to listen. You can unload and not be afraid that they're going to run off and tell your parents and then there's going to be issues in the congregation. And they can reinforce in your brain that, yeah, what's happening right now in your life with your folks and your JW family, yeah, those are really toxic, manipulative behaviors. They understand how these patterns work in relationships. I think it's helpful to talk to somebody that you don't know, has no ties to the situation, because sometimes you could talk to a friend who might mean well, who is either too close to the situation or they give, their unsolicited advice. They think they're helping, but it's not really helpful. They're trying to be supportive, but it's actually bad advice. Maybe you turn to other XJWs for support, which is good to an extent. In that situation too, you could fall down this dark, toxic rabbit hole because they haven't worked through their shit and they need to go outside and touch grass. Get a second opinion. I know somebody out there is going to be like, well, not all of us can afford therapy. I have 9 kids and a broken leg. Fine, crochet your way out of trauma. Scrapbook. Just do something positive that's not going to keep you in a constant negative headspace regarding your situation with your family. All right, so figure it out on your own or go speak to a professional. They understand these types of family dynamics and can offer you tools to help you cope with the situation and to keep you level-headed. So anyways, 5 tips. Keep what works, discard what doesn't. I don't have your life or your circumstances. I just wish you peace as you navigate this situation with your parents. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you found this content helpful. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button for future content, and I will see you in the next video.